Andy, the first address to the nation from the new president
Yeah.
was last night. Did you watch? I'm eager to know.
No, no, we weren't gonna watch anything, and then I wanted to watch Daredevil, but I didn't want to stay up that late. And
Oh yeah.
Daredevil or the pep rally. I've never been one for pep rallies, Dave.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, these speeches are just such like it's almost comical now. I think the Democrats held up signs
Yeah,
that said "you lie" or whatever it is,
yeah,
or "must sucks" or something. I can't like, and I'm like, we're getting comical now. I think a group of people were wearing common colors, and
yeah.
so like, and of course, everything is perfect. So,
Yeah, but
everything is perfect.
I read through some of the highlights and the president, celebrating what he's done, and again, just painting a picture that's like distorted history and distorted reality. But that's what these things are. I mean, they're
Yeah.
nonsense celebrations. So I did read through a list of 26 falsehoods that he said yesterday. He's reading, you're like,
Funny.
this is everything. Like he got more than this in his speech yesterday. There's so much nonsense that was said, but it doesn't matter who's in office. I mean, I hate these speeches. They're not required
Yeah.
to do it. They can just send a letter, but
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah, let's talk about something worthwhile.
Yeah, let's talk about something worthwhile, Andy. It is quite amazing how we go there. Okay, so let's do talk about a couple things here, Andy. Where should we start? Should we start with sports, Andy? Should we go a little bit of the sports deal?
Start with sports. Yeah, it's always a good place to
Okay.
start.
All right, so let's
Mama
start with
DeBoer
sports.
always hates it when we do. So let's.
Well, then let's do it. I mean, if you no, only kidding, Mama Jabor, only kidding. Andy, we talked about Matt Stafford and where he could land.
Yeah.
It turns out he's going to just stay right with LA, and I think we talked about this. I mean, clearly like he had a great run in Detroit, never could get over that proverbial hump, had great numbers. He clearly excelled and connected with Sean McVay. And so it only made sense for him to stay there. But what did you think when you saw that news?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it was the best outcome, I think, for both him and the Rams. I was glad to see it. I think it still is a good fit for him. He didn't need to go to the Giants, or the Jets, or the Raiders. So I think it's a win for everybody. Makes sense. And like, I've tried to kind of hate Stafford because he left Detroit, but I like him. He's a
Yeah.
good football player. He's a good dude. So I'm happy to see it.
All right, so that's good news for Matt Stafford. He gets a little bit of a bump there and goes on. Other quarterback news, Andy. The Jets are clearly done with Aaron Rodgers. There's been some discussions about where he could go and who could be missing a quarterback. The Vikings have said they're not going to franchise tag Sam Darnold, so we'll see how that they want to re-sign him, but probably not for a franchise tag. So they're going to try to go a little bit less than what he was. Again, somebody who's poised to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And then the last two games of the year were really duds, and unfortunate for him, is probably going to cost him some money. But let's talk about another quarterback here, Andy. Super Bowl winning quarterback, Carson Wentz. That you probably didn't. You like, when did he win a Super Bowl? But he did win with the Eagles when Nick Foles replaced him. I feel bad for Carson because he was having a great year, got hurt that year, but Nick Foles stepped in and took him to the Super Bowl, beat the Patriots that year. But he might be in for a payday here. He was the backup quarterback in Kansas City, saw very little time last year.
Yeah.
Um, but he might be landing at the Jets. This is not going to work out. Like Carson Wentz, I mean, he played with the Commanders a little bit. He played with a couple other teams. The Jets are just like they're asking for more pain, I think, here.
So I'll say this. I saw Carson Wentz that Super Bowl winning season. We saw them live. It was actually Eagles Commanders game, and he was incredible. I mean, that
Yeah,
year, until he got injured, he was having an MVP season. I think people forget that he's big, he can chuck the ball, and he was amazingly slippery for a big guy before that injury. I mean, he would just get away from the defense. He was really, really good. And then he got hurt against the Rams. Season ended, got the ring, not the way he wanted. And I don't know if it was a lack of confidence after that. Like he never fully recovered, right? He went to the Colts. Things weren't going bad, but then in the playoffs, just like a terrible terrible end to the run, there in
Yeah.
Indianapolis. And he just kind of got put on the side. Like his guy's just not the guy he was. I'm not sure that he can't be that guy again, though, Dave. He's still young enough. He still has all that talent, and maybe I think he's a guy that for a team like the Jets who are looking to transition, they're looking to make changes rather than bring in a rookie in a weak class and thinking that this guy's going to change our franchise. Take a chance on Carson Wentz. He's probably not going to be that expensive. Give him a couple seasons to maybe be a great quarterback, and if not, you've at least got somebody that's played the game that can get you probably further along without too much catastrophe. I actually like this move for both teams if it ends up happening. I still think Wentz has potential.
I will tell you, it could be Andy. It could be, and we're going to give him another chance. But this is like chance number four for
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah.
and I just want like, how do we not have 32 fucking unbelievably exceptional quarterbacks in this country?
Yeah.
I mean, we like there's over 100 Division I quarterbacks. There's a lot of Division II and Division III quarterbacks. Like, how do we not have 32 quarterbacks that are just exceptional?
Yeah.
And I get some of it is about coaching and some of it about the system that they go into, and maybe it's a bad mix for the system, but you should still be like unbelievable. And I this is just where I struggle with. But so we'll see on that front as well. Andy, other news, Saquon Barkley,
Yeah.
who the Giants famously chose not to want to give an extension to or give a new contract to last year, goes to Philadelphia. Has an unbelievable season, over 2,000 yards,
Yep.
wins the Super Bowl with them. Even though he didn't have a great Super Bowl, he was effective all across the field, blocking, catching passes, and running. Great year. He gets now a 2-year extension, a 2-year contract extension for $20 million a year. This is like more egg on face for the Giants. Like you've got to be eating a lot of crow at this point to
Yeah.
be able to say, "Wow, like did we just?" I mean, is this one of the worst decisions ever? Saquon Barkley, right or wrong, wanted to stay a New York Giant,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have taken much. And now look at what it is. So.
Especially given the fact that Danny Dimes is no longer there. The guy's been
That's
doing
right. That's right.
it was a fail. And look, Saquon and Jameer Gibbs in Detroit and a couple others,
Yeah.
I think have really said, hey, the NFL and fans who tried to marginalize a running back for a couple of years here and they were being dismissed. Don't dismiss the running back, right? You really can't. If you've got a good line and you've got a good running back, that can be a game changer. I was really happy to see Barkley get this extension, 2 years. It's a lot of money, and it's deserved. Like if Eagles want to try and make another run, they need him back there doing what he does, hurdling over people, making plays, just being a persistent threat because you've got to deal with him and Jalen Hurts running the ball. It's a difference maker. Great for both Saquon and the Eagles.
Yeah, so I mean, clearly something good worked out. This is what happens when you have a good organization where the owner doesn't meddle too much. I mean, I can speak from my team where my owner is the general manager, but the owner doesn't meddle too much. I think you've seen a difference when the Detroit Lions, the owner stepped away and let the general manager do the right things there, and Detroit's now a power, and that's for years to come now, and the Cowboys are sucking last place again. I'm sure. So, all right, Andy. Any other sports news you want to hit? Any NFL things that caught your eye over the last couple days?
Hey, the free agent tagging period is over,
Yeah,
so that's done. So either you've made a free agent or I'm sorry, franchise tag, I should say, not
tagging.
like the franchise tag. So that's done. So that with that piece in place, now we're looking to free agency. There's going to be some big moves in the draft. So like you said, Dave, while the NFL season is over, all the drama of the NFL continues, and the NFL does a great job of keeping us engaged. I love it. So there's a lot to look forward to this off season. I can't stand the mock draft. That's for another day, but there's still a lot of drama.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, this is how they keep in front of the news cycle, right? Because they have, they went from the Super Bowl, then they started talking about, coaching hires and some of that stuff. Then is the draft combine. Now it's free agency, And then in a month, a little over a month from now, we'll have the NFL draft, and then camps are starting. So we're not too. They win the off season every year. I think that's clearly why they're the best sport
Yeah.
out there. So, all right, Andy, let's go to another thing related to athletics. A new report has come out, Andy, about stating effectively more than half of adults and a third of children and young people worldwide will be overweight or obese
Yeah.
by 2025.
Amazing.
They're labeling this an unparalleled threat
Yeah.
of early death, disease, enormous strain on the healthcare systems. And frankly, so right now there are 2.1 billion adults aged 25 or above and 493 million children aged 5 to 25 who are overweight or obese.
Yeah.
That's up from almost that's more than double what the numbers were in early 1990. So Andy, we've talked a lot on health here. We've talked a lot of, we had my health challenge, and I will admit the last couple days of being in a hospital or around a hospital or with a lot of food haven't been great days for me, but consistently, I mean, generally speaking, we've talked about how to maintain a good health and be active. We've had guests on talking about their journeys.
Yeah.
So what did you think when you saw this report, Andy?
Yeah, I mean it's sad, Dave. It's sad and it's scary
Yeah,
because I mean these are real, I mean, real numbers and terrible projections, right? I mean it's a considerable increase in what's projected to be 50 years of not just Americans but adults worldwide, right? Being considered obese. Now, like the obesity numbers, like I think a lot of people have come to say, hey, like the numbers themselves aren't the issue, right? The like what's considered obese. I think I'm considered obese by the pure weight standard, right? Just because it varies on your size and things of that issue. But the reality is like the body composition of where those projections are taking us. It's that people are eating more and more garbage, gaining more and more necessary weight, and not taking care of themselves. That's not good, right? As
yeah.
technology advances, we don't end up in the Wally world, right, where everybody's sitting around, unable to move around on their own. It is hard in this day and age, I think, especially with all the devices and time behind desks for Americans, especially to burn the calories we want to burn. It takes conscious effort, and there's so much food available all the time. My wife and I went to Trader Joe's over the weekend, and we're like, "Oh, look at those cookies! Oh, look at those chocolates! Oh, look at those treats!" I mean, it's everywhere, and it's so easy to consume two, three, five, 800 calories without even knowing it of just sugars and junk. But we've got to do better than that, like for not just for ourselves, but for our future, for our children, for our country. And so, like, I really hope people look at this stuff and think about, like, how am I doing? And, if you're gaining 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 pounds a year, like work on changing that trajectory because, like, we've got to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and Andy, I think a challenge for so many people is they're in information overload
Yeah,
on a lot of today. Red wine is good for you. Tomorrow,
yeah,
red wine is bad for you. Eating meat is good for you. Eating fruits and vegetables are bad for you. I mean, there's so much being thrown out there based on studies or this or that. And we've talked about Arnold and his Pump Club in the newsletter, and I think what they do a good job of is really saying, hey, when you look at studies, you have to read all the details. Obviously, the headlines grab you and say, oh, I got to do this, or this diet works for me, or this diet works for that. The reality is like, yeah, red meat could be bad if you eat it every day for 3 weeks straight or something. Who does that, right? So
yeah,
you have to read the fine print on some of that. But I think another thing, Andy, is like we overthink a lot of this stuff. And I follow somebody, Mitchell Little, on Instagram. It's a Mitchell Little Academy. I think he does a really good job of cutting through and saying, hey, these influencers who are out there who are promoting, hey, do this type of exercise or do that type of exercise. Don't overthink it. Just be consistently average every day.
yeah,
And what that means is, hey, like if you have a bad, and we've talked about this on the pod too, is like, look, you're going to have a bad day. That doesn't mean you ruin your life for it.
yeah,
Like you have a bad day, you get back on the horse and do it again. Being consistently average just means, hey, look at, like, I'm going to choose to eat this versus that. I don't need three helpings of this. I had enough. I'm good, and I'm going to go with that. Calorie deficits work for weight loss. I mean, that's the proven science. Getting outside and exercising, that works, right? You have to be active. And I think you stressed on like the Wally approach. Yeah, yeah, that's not a far stretch. We've gotten so used to everything being at our seat table. We don't need to get up and move. But spending 10 minutes out, and this is what Arnold promotes too. 10 minutes a day, then becomes 15 minutes a day, then becomes 20 or 30 minutes a day, and you're on a healthy regime. Because when you start feeling those hunger cravings or what, the answer is not eat more food and eat more junk food. Hey, do something different. Like get up, move around, go for a walk, enjoy outside or whatever. Even if it's cold. I love getting outside and walking when it's cold,
I do
putting
too.
on all my layers. Yeah, and so I think that's where it's an information overload to our detriment sometimes, Andy.
Yeah, and I think you're right all around, and you hit a really good example with sort of the what's healthy and what's not today is a reality for people. Like, what am I allowed to eat? What am I not allowed to eat? I think eggs and coffee are two of my favorite examples of that, right? They go back and forth, and again, you mentioned Arnold, like they've done a lot to promote consumption of both, and I think they're right on, right?
Yep.
Like eggs, like yeah, if you've got high cholesterol, look at the yolk. Maybe you don't have that, maybe you don't have 6 eggs a day, right? But consuming eggs is healthy. There's a lot of benefit to it, and they've been popular, not popular over time, but overall, just like trajectory of weight gain is consistent. They're healthy. Coffee, you don't need to put sugar and creamers and everything into every serving, but coffee, especially in the mornings, is consistently demonstrated as being very healthy for you in the right amount for your body and everything else. So, being smart, being rational, everything you just touched on, Dave, is so right on. So, I mean, you can start anytime, right? If we're consistently gaining weight, if we're not getting the results we want, if we feel unhealthy, it's not just about looking sexy, right? It's not about trying to look like the folks at the Oscars. It's just about being healthy. And I hope the listeners, take that step. And it's really hard, Dave. We know during different phases of life, like it can be really hard to get out there and run or lift or whatever. But find 20 minutes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
find 30 minutes. You can get a lot done. Like try and do something, but as a nation, we can celebrate sports and watching them. We've got to take care of ourselves and celebrate our own health and physical fitness too.
Yeah, and look, let's just cut to the chase. Like resistance training doesn't mean like you need to bench press 300 pounds.
Yeah,
Like I will tell you, I'm in the gym, I'm benching just the bar and 45 plates on each side. So 100 and what, 35
yeah,
pounds or whatever. That's all I do. I do 4 sets of that and I feel good about it.
yeah,
But that resistance training helps so many different it's proven it helps your brain growth, it helps your all of your activities all online. Again, it doesn't have to be like Andy. I know you work out a ton and you look great for it, but I mean it doesn't have to be all of that. It could be 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. Just get out and do some resistance training, get
yeah,
out and do some exercises, and when you feel those cravings, again, be consistently average. You had enough, you feel good about it, go for a walk and do something different. So,
yeah.
all right, Andy, we'll continue to hit this. I think it's a really important study that has come along the way and get through there. So, okay, Andy, I'm going to do this last segment here. A couple different just odds and ends here. How's that? How do we think about that? You mentioned Daredevil. So did you watch any of it? Did you
No,
watch any of
so,
it?
so my wife and I actually got down a little bit earlier than usual yesterday, and we're like, "Hey, let's watch Daredevil." We threw it on. Didn't come available till 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah,
We were
that's the
too early.
worst.
We were too early for it, Dave. So it's probably gonna have to wait for the weekend for us. But we rewatched the trailer just because we were already there, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this. Like the actors, and I'm glad they brought them all back. Like it's gonna be really good.
Yeah, I think they did a really nice job of doing exactly that because this was a popular Netflix show. Now it's on Disney Plus, but they didn't restart the well, I mean, it's called Reborn, Daredevil Reborn or Born Again or whatever, but it's not a whole new series. It's the same characters that are just carrying over. I think it's going to be a really good one. Andy, where do you stand on binging episodes? So I say that because Andor, a TV show on the Star Wars side, really great season one. Season two is coming out here in a couple weeks. They're choosing like to like Netflix famously drops all the episodes at one time.
Yeah.
Then some of them drop it per week. Andor is going to do they do three episode arcs that ultimately come together at the end. So they're going to drop three episodes at one time each week for 4 weeks. So you get 12 episodes total. Where are you at on the binging? How do you feel about that?
Yes. So I like the ability to watch as much as you want. It's like I don't mind when they drop the whole season and it's like, hey, just enjoy this. I mean, growing up, of course, was always, an episode a week for a number of weeks. That was a season and that kept you watching, right? But I like the fact you can, hey, if you've got time, you want to watch three of these, like go ahead and crush it. I think it works. I think it works like right now, for example, one thing my wife and I have been watching is we never saw House of Cards. We're going back and starting that. Some days it's one episode, some days it's two. It's our choice. I love the fact you've got that flexibility. So I like the ability to binge if you want to do it. You want to sit there and crush, 5 episodes on a Saturday night, like go for it.
Yeah, I'm a little torn because sometimes I like to think about the episode. Have you seen these? I mean, some of these people like really dissect these episodes,
Yeah.
especially some. And I just love watching TV for the sake of it, and I don't get too into it. But man, some of these people really get into it. I'm sure Daredevil's going to be it. Oh, did you see him flick his wrist this way? That means he's clearly doing the so and so move and stuff. I guess maybe that's where it gets a little overboard. But
I,
I'll see.
I enjoy those though, Dave. Like I like so
Yeah.
if you like I mentioned on the episode you were out, I mentioned that my wife and I like watching the stupid dating shows and we genuinely enjoy those. And so NFL analyst for ESPN, Mina Kimes, for example, does a podcast on one of those shows. And it's just fun to go back and listen to her breaking down a stupid dating show and like getting into the weeds of characters and the nonsense. So I think it's kind of fun to be able to watch a show. And the Penguin did this when it came out. There's a Penguin podcast. You get to sort of like enjoy the show and then hear some perspective that goes along with it. And you're like, yeah, or I agree, or I don't agree. I think it's a fun way to sort of get more traction and more value out of the show that's on. So I think it's fun. I think it's fun.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be interesting. So, all right, well, that's fun. Okay, Andy, one more not TV discussion, but we talked a couple weeks ago. The Secretary of Defense changed back. So again, the U.S. Army posts, many of them had been named for Confederate soldiers, and I'm in Gettysburg today with my dad's funeral. But it's in Gettysburg, and of course, is the site of one of the biggest battles of the Civil War, the turning point, many would argue, for the Civil War.
Yeah.
Um, but about in 2022, there was a name change for all of those bases to other names. Famously, Fort Bragg became Fort Liberty, which was one of the stupidest ones. But many other ones changed as well. The new Secretary of Defense came in. He changed Fort Liberty back to Fort Bragg, except not the Confederate general, but somebody else, a hero in his own right. I didn't have much of an issue with that. Fort Bragg is synonymous with so many of our biggest, Army units, most popular Army units, and a lot of people reflect on or relate directly with Fort Bragg as people spend years at Fort Bragg,
Yeah.
not just an assignment. Well, this week they also did Fort Benning, who is again named for another Confederate general. That was changed to Hal, or to General Moore and his wife, who famously, Andy, this is the basis for the Vietnam movie, We Were Soldiers Once and Young. It was a book that became a movie that Mel Gibson starred in, with General Moore effectively redefined mobile warfare from just straight infantry to using helicopters, and I think that was appropriately changed. Well, they have changed Fort Moore back to Fort Benning, except this time it was to a soldier from World War I who earned the Silver Star. Again, I struggle with this one a little bit more than I did with Fort Bragg. I think Fort Bragg made a lot of sense. Fort Moore, General Moore should have his own fort in his own right. And I think taking that honor from him And again, this soldier for Benning, who won the Silver Star, I mean, earned a hero in his own right. But I think this is fanboy treatment here, Andy. And I think that I have a little bit of struggle with this one, Andy. What did you think when you saw that story?
So it is tricky, right? It is tricky, I think. And I was weary when I first heard that, the incoming now Secretary of Defense wanted to change the names back. It's like, what are we doing here? Now,
Yeah.
I'm not. I agree. Some of the people that have been recognized, all of them, everyone that's been recognized, Liberty was silly, but the individuals have been recognized. Like we should find a way to continue to honor them. Like they should be honored. And I believe in changing the name back to Benning. Secretary of Defense did make comments that like we still want to honor, more. We want to honor that name. And I think that's great. What I do appreciate is the old names do have like legacy and historical significance to individuals who have served and been through there. And that's kind of what the Secretary of Defense has said, like, hey, you know, fathers and grandfathers and sisters and mothers have served at Benning and Bragg. And there's connection there in generations. And like I do get that. Like, I mean, we grew up, Fort Benning School of Boys was the miserable place you went for his infantry misery, right? So I appreciate the idea. Now, I didn't want to see him go back and re-honor, Confederate generals. I think that's wrong, and I'm glad to see us get away from that. I think finding sort of acceptable heroes to rename them to, like, hey, we want to keep the name, but we're not honoring, this Confederate, guy who held up slavery. We're finding another hero that we can celebrate because, frankly, most people don't know or care about the history of the names, for a lot of these, right? Especially the average American. So it's like, hey, here's a way to sort of keep the name, but change the name to somebody we can honor. I actually think I'm okay with this. I actually kind of like the approach. I think it's a little bit more thoughtful and sensitive. It's keeping history, but making it more acceptable, for all of us. And I think that's a respectful way to do it. And along the way, like let's honor those that have been identified worthy of honor and respect. And I don't think it's a bad approach. So I have to actually commend the way it's being done. You can disagree with it. I think there's room to disagree with it altogether. Like, hey, just make the change. But I don't think anybody's going to Fort Bragg and thinking, yeah, the Confederacy lives again. Like that's not the approach. I mean, so I don't think we're honoring or mishonoring, Confederate generals. I think we're doing it in a thoughtful way. I actually like the move, and I like seeing some of the names that we grew up with, Bragg and Benning, being what they are.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like I think this has been done tastefully. I
Yeah.
think it's been done in a good way, and I have no problem with Bragg. I am struggling with Benning just a little bit here, and what do we do? Again, not to the new Benning, a hero in his own right, and he should be honored, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's appropriate. And I do understand like there is the military for a lot of things. My grandfather served, my father served,
Yeah.
my son now serves. I mean, so we have a family history here. I don't know. So I hear your point. I think it makes sense. I think Hal Moore should have stayed, and it fits that he's well, it doesn't matter. So good discussion point on that, Andy.
But I think it's a fair point, right? I think there
Yeah.
there are good heroes that should be honored, and I think in the statement I have to go back and look at it. But I think
He did, yeah. He
yeah,
did make a reference that they were going to try to make some sort of way to honor General Moore, so
yeah.
and his wife.
So yeah, so I do appreciate that. I think your point is fair, but I have to say, like we want to like we're happy to bang up the administration because there's a lot of really stupid things being done. I think there's one thing that's being done a little bit more thoughtfully with a little bit more sensitivity. And DOD is really good about this stuff, right? Hopefully this purge isn't as ugly as it looks like it might be because DOD has a lot of issues, right? There's a lot of things to be frustrated by, but at the same time, like DOD is pretty smart, and I think the way this is being
Yeah.
handled is pretty smart.
Yeah, DoD has got a lot of problems right now recruiting and retaining soldiers right now, more unlike anything else before. I think it's an identity crisis. I don't think they've seen. We can maybe talk about that a little bit later. We've talked about their recruiting efforts in the past and some of the challenges they have. I think it's a struggle with coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, how they go. So,
Well, they,
Andy,
they, they've recruited my son, Dave, who's now down at
uh,
South Carolina at basic training. So,
there you go. There you go. Congratulations to young, soon to be second lieutenant Jabor. So another Jabor in the family, continuing a great legacy there, and congratulations on that. So, all right, Andy. With that, we covered a lot of ground today. Covered a lot of ground today.
We
So
did.
I'm gonna begin my trek back from Gettysburg back to Charlotte. So I will catch up with you from hopefully the warmer confines of North Carolina on Friday, Andy, with more to talk about.